The Man Who Watched from the Tree Line. Reported by Daniel Cruz, Colorado, 2019. Daniel was an experienced solo backpacker. He had done dozens of trips alone in the Rockies. He knew the sounds of the wilderness, the way the wind moved through pines, the difference between an animal and something else. He thought nothing could rattle him anymore. He was wrong. It was his third night camped near a dry creek bed about 14 miles from the nearest road in the San Isabel National Forest. No signal. No other hikers for 2 days. He'd built a small fire, eaten his freeze-dried dinner, and was sitting quietly watching the flames die down before bed. The sky was clear, full of stars, and the temperature had dropped to the low 40s. That's when he noticed the shape. About 60 feet away, just at the edge of where his firelight reached the tree line, something was standing. At first he thought it was a tree stump, a broken trunk left at an odd angle. He stared at it casually for a moment, then looked away. When he looked back, it had moved 3 feet to the left. His blood went cold. He grabbed his flashlight and aimed it at the shape. A man.
Tall, thin, wearing what looked like a dark jacket, standing perfectly still, arms at his sides, facing Daniel's camp. The flashlight beam hit him fully, and the man did not react, did not raise a hand, did not step back, did not speak. He simply stood there, staring. Daniel shouted, "Hey, can I help you?" "Nothing. Are you lost? Do you need something?" Silence. For nearly 4 minutes, Daniel and the stranger held their positions. Daniel's hand was shaking. He had a fixed-blade knife on his hip and a bear canister that doubled as a stool. He quietly gripped the canister. He kept the light on the man the entire time, terrified of what would happen if he looked away. Then, slowly, the man turned and walked into the trees. No crackling of branches, no sound of footsteps. He simply moved into the darkness and was gone. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat with his back against a boulder, flashlight and knife in hand, watching the tree line until sunrise. When the sky finally lightened, he packed his camp in under 8 minutes, the fastest he had ever broken camp in his life, and hiked out without stopping. Back at the trailhead, he mentioned the encounter to a Forest Service ranger. The ranger's expression went flat. He told Daniel that the same stretch of trail had 3 reports of a similar figure in the previous 18 months. In one case, a couple had woken to find the man standing silently outside their tent at 3 a.m. No one had ever been harmed, but no one had ever found out who it was either. Something was living under the cabin. Reported by Sarah Okonkwo, Michigan Upper Peninsula, 2021. Sarah had rented a remote hunting cabin for a solo writing retreat in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. A week alone, no Wi-Fi, no distractions, just her and a manuscript. The cabin was accessed by a 2-track dirt road and sat on the edge of a large, private tract of forest. The nearest neighbor was 4 miles away. The owner, an older man named Earl, had given her a handshake and a key and told her to enjoy herself. The first 2 days were perfect. On the 3rd night, she heard scratching beneath the floor. She assumed it was a raccoon or possum that had gotten under the cabin's crawl space. She banged the floor with her boot a few times, and it stopped. She went to sleep and didn't think about it again. The next night, the scratching returned, but slower this time. More deliberate. Long pauses between each sound, like something was moving carefully, not frantically. She pressed her ear to the floorboards. It wasn't moving the way an animal moves. There was a rhythm to it. Scratch, scratch, stop, scratch, scratch, stop. She told herself it was nothing. On the 5th night, she woke up at 2:30 a.m. to a different sound entirely, a low, steady knocking. 3 knocks, then silence. 3 more, then silence. It was coming from the crawl space access hatch, which was inside the cabin, flush with the floor near the kitchen. She stared at it from across the room, blanket pulled up, heart slamming. The knocking stopped after about 2 minutes. She slept with every light in the cabin on and a kitchen knife beside her. In the morning, she worked up the nerve to open the hatch. She shone her phone light into the crawl space and found nothing. No animal, no tracks in the dirt. But in the far corner, her light caught something that made her stomach drop. A pile of food wrappers, granola bar wrappers, an empty soup can, a crushed water bottle. Someone had been under there. Recently, the wrappers were clean, no dust on them, and beside the pile, scratched deep into one of the support beams with something sharp. "I hear you up there." Sarah packed her car in under 10 minutes and drove until she had cell service. She called Earl and told him what she found. There was a very long silence on his end. Then he told her that 6 months earlier, a transient man had been spotted twice near the property. He had assumed the man moved on. Earl called the police. They searched the property and the surrounding woods. They found a small camp, a tarp shelter, food scraps, a notebook filled with handwritten observations. About 400 yards behind the cabin. Dates, times, lights on and off, routines. The man was never found. The voice that knew my name. Reported by Kevin Marsh, Great Smoky Mountains. 2022. Kevin was not a stranger to solo camping. He'd been doing it since he was a teenager, always in the Smokies. It was his home range, terrain he knew in his bones. He had a favorite dispersed campsite, a small flat area beside a shallow creek about 6 miles off the main trail in a section of backcountry that rarely saw other hikers. He had camped there at least 15 times over the years. On this trip, he arrived at the site in the early afternoon, set up his tent, filtered water from the creek, and cooked dinner while the light faded through the canopy. It was a warm October evening, the leaves at peak color, and he was completely at peace. He fell asleep early, around 9 p.m., with the creek gurgling softly nearby. He woke at some point in the night to total silence. Not the normal nighttime quiet, something more than that. The creek was still audible, but every insect, every night bird, every ambient sound of the living forest had stopped completely. Kevin had been in the backcountry long enough to know that animals go quiet for a reason. He lay still and listened. Then, from somewhere outside and perhaps 30 feet from his tent, a voice said his name. Kevin. Not a shout. Not frantic. Just his name, spoken in an even tone, the way someone speaks to a person sitting right next to them. He stopped breathing. His first thought was that somehow a friend had followed him out, was pranking him. But no one had known his exact campsite. He hadn't told a single person where he was camping, just the general zone, on a permit form filed with the park. He said nothing. The forest remained silent. 30 seconds passed. Then the voice again, the same flat, even tone. "Kevin, come out." He reached slowly for his bear spray in the tent pocket and unclipped the safety. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely manage it. He stared at the tent wall, watching for a shadow, listening for footsteps. Nothing moved. He waited for what felt like an hour, but was probably 15 minutes. The forest sound slowly, cautiously returned. A cricket, then another, then the tree frogs, the full chorus building back to normal. He did not exit the tent. He did not sleep. At first light, he packed quickly and hiked out at a near run, stopping only when he was back at the trailhead parking lot, doors locked, engine running. Kevin has returned to the Smokies since then. He goes with a partner now. He has never returned to that campsite. He has never told the story without first making sure all the lights in the room are on. He says the thing that still disturbs him most, more than the voice itself, more than the words, is something he only realized on the drive home that morning. The voice had not sounded threatening. It had sounded patient. "Sleep tight,"